The council chamber was massive. 17 different species sat in their designated areas, watching the center floor with great interest. The room was circular, with seats rising up like a stadium. At the very center stood a platform where important matters were discussed and decided. Wu stood near the human delegation area, his hands clasped behind his back. He wore the simple gray uniform of a human diplomat. His face showed no emotion, though his mind was racing. Today would change everything. The delegation entered from the opposite side. Every being in the chamber turned to look. There were impressive creatures. They stood nearly 8 feet tall, covered in dark scales that looked like armor. Their eyes glowed a deep amber color. They moved like predators, smooth and deadly. At the front walked War Chief. His scales bore the scars of 1,000 battles. 3 others followed him, each one radiating danger in their own way. The first was built like a mountain, muscles upon muscles. The second moved with calculated precision, eyes constantly scanning. The third walked with the grace of a dancer, but everyone knew dancers could be deadly. Ambassador Yang leaned close to Wu. The older man's gray hair was neatly combed back. "Are you certain about this plan?" he whispered. Wu nodded once. "Trust me." They reached the center platform. His voice boomed across the chamber. "We invoke the right of supremacy." The translator devices everyone wore converted his words instantly. "Humanity claims the Outer Rim colonies. We challenge this claim. These territories belong to the strong, not to the weak." Murmurs spread through the chamber. The right of supremacy was ancient law. No one could refuse it. The species who proved themselves superior would win the disputed territory. It was brutal but legal. Gestured to his 3 companions. "I present our champions. Eth, who has never fallen in battle. En, whose strategies have conquered 12 systems. And an undefeated in single combat for 20 years. The 3 warriors stepped forward. Eth beat his chest with a fist, creating a sound like thunder. En simply stared at the humans with cold calculation. En's hand rested on a blade at his hip, his stance ready for violence. "Humanity must present their champions," continued. 3 contests will decide this matter. Survival, strategy, combat. The superior species will claim victory. The chamber erupted in conversation. Other species began placing bets, discussing the outcome. Everyone expected humanity to bring their finest soldiers. Humans had proven themselves capable warriors in the past. Surely they would bring their best. Yang stood and walked to the platform. "We accept the challenge." This declaration brought silence. No one expected such a quick acceptance. Most species would delay, negotiate, or try to find alternative solutions. "However," Yang continued, "we request a short recess, 1 hour to prepare." His eyes narrowed with suspicion. "You attempt to delay." "Not at all," Yang replied calmly. "We simply need to bring our representative from the human residential section of the station. 1 hour, that is all." The war chief considered this. Finally he nodded. 1 hour, no more. The chamber emptied for the recess. Species gathered in groups discussing what would happen. The warriors stood like statues, not speaking, barely moving. They were confident. Why wouldn't they be? They had brought the very best. In a small waiting room, Wu made a communication call. "Grandmother, are you ready?" The screen showed an elderly woman sitting in a comfortable chair. Her gray hair was tied back in a simple bun. Her face showed her age through lines and wrinkles, but her eyes were sharp and clear. "Ready as I'll ever be, child. Are you sure about this?" "You taught me to respect our elders," Wu said with a small smile. "Time to show the galaxy why." Grandmother Bora laughed softly. "They're going to think you're insane." "They already do. Come on, I'll meet you at the entrance." 50 minutes later, the chamber began to fill again. They returned first, their warriors taking positions on the platform. Other species filtered back to their seats. Everyone was eager to see which human champions would appear. The human delegation entrance opened. Wu walked out first. Behind him came a small elderly woman. She moved slowly but steadily, one hand holding a simple wooden walking stick. She wore comfortable clothes, nothing fancy or military. A small woven bag hung from her shoulder. The chamber fell absolutely silent. Grandmother Bora walked beside her grandson, her steps careful but determined. They reached the platform together. Wu helped her up the 3 small steps. Stared at them. His scales rippled with what might have been confusion or anger. "What is this?" Wu spoke clearly. "This is my grandmother, Bora. She will represent humanity in your challenges." The silence shattered. Voices erupted from every direction. The delegation roared in outrage. Other species called out in shock and confusion. Some thought it was a joke. Others thought it was an insult. Eth, the Berserker champion, stepped forward with anger in his eyes. "This is mockery. You dishonor the right." "We honor it completely," Wu replied, his voice calm despite the chaos. "You brought your 3 deadliest warriors. We brought ours." His voice cut through the noise like a blade. "Silence," the chamber obeyed. He turned to Yang. "You send an elder female against trained warriors. Explain this decision." Yang stood beside Wu and Bora. "The right of supremacy requires each species to present their best. We have done so, unless you wish to reject your own ancient laws." The trap was perfect. They lived by their honor codes. To refuse an opponent, any opponent, would bring shame. His jaw clenched. His warriors looked to him for guidance. Finally, the war chief spoke. "Very well, if humanity wishes to lose quickly, we will oblige." He turned to Bora. "Elder human, do you understand what you face?" Grandmother Bora smiled sweetly. She leaned on her walking stick and looked up at the towering warrior. "Young man, I've faced worse things than contests. I've raised 5 children, survived 3 wars, and dealt with politicians for 70 years. I think I'll manage." Some beings in the chamber laughed nervously. Others remained silent, unsure what to think. The warriors looked at each other with confusion. This was unprecedented. Bora continued, her voice gentle but clear. "So what's the first challenge? I'd like to get started. My garden back on Earth needs tending and I don't want to be away too long." Eth growled low in his throat. "The first contest tests survival, 48 hours in a hostile environment, no assistance, no mercy." "That sounds reasonable," Bora replied. She patted the bag at her side. "I've packed some things. When do we begin?" Studied her face carefully, searching for fear or doubt. He found neither. "We begin at dawn tomorrow. The simulation dome will be prepared. Rest well, elder human. It may be your last peaceful night." "Oh, I always sleep well," Bora said cheerfully. "It's one of the benefits of a clear conscience." Wu guided his grandmother back toward the human area. As they walked, whispers followed them. The other species didn't know what to make of this development. They seemed insulted yet bound by honor. Humanity had made an impossible choice. In the corridor outside, Yang caught up with them. "The entire galaxy thinks we've lost our minds." "Let them think that," Bora said. Her smile faded, replaced by something harder, something that showed the steel beneath the gentle exterior. "Tomorrow, we teach them something important." "What's that, grandmother?" Wu asked, though he already knew the answer. "That humanity's greatest strength isn't our youth or our weapons or our ships." She looked at both men with eyes that had seen decades of history. "It's that we remember, we learn, we pass down knowledge through generations. That berserker warrior has trained for maybe 30 years. I've been learning for 77. She turned toward the residential section, walking stick tapping against the floor. "Now, I need to prepare, and you two need to stop worrying. I didn't survive everything life threw at me just to lose to an angry lizard in a dome." As she disappeared around the corner, Yang shook his head. "I hope you know what you're doing." Wu watched his grandmother leave. "She's taught me everything I know about diplomacy, strategy, and survival. If anyone can do this, she can." They won't show mercy because she's elderly. She's not asking for mercy, Wu replied. She's asking for a fair contest, and that's exactly what she'll get. Tomorrow, the first challenge would begin. The galaxy would watch an elderly human woman face a warrior bred for battle. Most expected a quick defeat. But those who knew humanity, who really understood what made humans different, suspected something else entirely. The pack had brought their deadliest warriors. Humanity had done the same. They just defined deadly differently. The simulation dome was enormous. It stretched nearly a mile in every direction, filled with various terrain types. Dense forests transitioned into rocky mountains. Rivers cut through valleys. The environmental systems could create any condition, from burning heat to freezing cold. It was designed to test survival skills to their absolute limits. Viewing galleries surrounded the dome. Representatives from all 17 species gathered to watch. Some came out of curiosity. Others wanted to witness what they believed would be humanity's humiliation. The delegation occupied the prime viewing position, their warriors standing like statues. Wu stood in the human gallery with Ambassador Yang and several others. Among them was one, a young ambassador who kept wringing her hands nervously. "This is madness," she whispered. "That environment is deadly even for trained soldiers." "Have faith," Yang replied quietly. Below, 2 entrance gates stood on opposite sides of the dome. The challenge was simple: survive for 48 hours. The environment would gradually become more hostile. Temperature changes, simulated storms, dangerous terrain. Whoever lasted the full period while maintaining their health would win. If both survived, judges would evaluate their methods and performance. Eth entered from the west gate. The massive warrior wore light armor designed for movement. He carried a blade, a length of rope, a fire starter, a water container, and various survival tools. His expression showed complete confidence. He had trained for this his entire life. Grandmother Bora entered from the east gate. She wore practical clothing suitable for hiking. Her walking stick was in one hand, her small woven bag over her shoulder. She looked around the dome with calm interest, like someone surveying a new garden. The contrast was striking. Eth immediately began moving with purpose, heading for higher ground to survey the territory. Bora walked slowly to a nearby cluster of trees, studying them carefully. "What is she doing?" one asked anxiously. "She should be securing resources, finding shelter." "She is," Wu said. "Just watch." Eth moved like a hunting machine. He identified water sources, marked dangerous areas, set up basic traps for food. His movements were efficient and practiced. Every action had purpose. Within 2 hours, he had established a defensible camp position with clear sight lines. Bora had moved much less distance. She had found a spot near a stream, protected by rocks on 2 sides. She gathered specific plants, sorted through them carefully, and arranged them in neat piles. Then she began building a small fire. "The Berserker has a significant advantage," one of the observers noted loudly. "Superior position, better preparation, efficient resource use." Said nothing, but his eyes never left the screen showing both participants. The first night fell. The temperature dropped significantly. Eth had built a proper shelter, a lean-to structure that blocked the wind. He sat inside it, eating dried rations, staying warm through controlled breathing techniques his people had perfected. Bora sat by her small fire. She had built it carefully, banking it to burn slow and steady. She was making tea from some of the plants she had gathered. The firelight showed her face calm and thoughtful. She occasionally added small pieces of wood, keeping the flames at just the right height. "She's wasting energy on comfort," Eth said to the cameras monitoring him. All participants wore small communication devices so viewers could hear their thoughts. Survival requires discipline, not tea parties. Morning came. Eth rose with the sun and immediately began checking his traps and improving his position. He worked constantly, never resting, driven by warrior discipline. Bora woke slowly, stretching carefully. She drank water, ate some food from her bag, and then began walking along the stream. She was gathering more plants, examining them closely, sometimes tasting small amounts. "Is she foraging?" Yang asked. "She's doing more than that," Wu replied. "She's learning the environment." The second day brought rain, heavy, cold rain that made everything difficult. Eth's shelter kept him mostly dry. He remained inside, conserving energy, waiting for the weather to pass. This was proper survival technique. Bora got wet. She didn't seem bothered by it. She used a broad leaf as a makeshift umbrella and continued her slow exploration. She found a hollow tree and investigated it. She discovered a patch of berries and carefully tasted one before collecting several. By the second evening, something interesting happened. Eth's supplies were holding steady, but he was alone, isolated. His expression had shifted slightly. The constant vigilance was taking a mental toll, though his physical condition remained excellent. Bora had returned to her camp. She had collected various items throughout the day. Now she was cooking something over her fire. The smell of the food wafted through the dome. She hummed quietly to herself while cooking. Eth could smell the cooking even from his distant position. His rations were nutritious but bland. The scent was distracting. He shook his head, forcing focus. "Comfort is weakness," he muttered. The third day arrived. The simulation introduced a new challenge. The temperature began to swing wildly between hot and cold. Most participants would struggle with this, burning energy to regulate their body temperature. Eth handled it well. His species was adaptable. He adjusted his activity levels to match the temperature shifts. When it was hot, he rested. When it cooled, he worked. Efficient, logical. Bora did something unexpected. She moved her camp. Not far, just to a different spot where a large rock face created natural shade during the hot periods and reflected heat during the cold ones. She had observed the sun's movement and planned accordingly. "That's actually clever," one admitted grudgingly. The fourth day brought the most significant change. The simulated environment introduced the scent and signs of a large predator. Not a real one, but the simulation was designed to create psychological pressure. Most warriors would either prepare to fight or move to a more defensible position. Eth did both. He armed himself, enhanced his shelter's defenses, and prepared for combat. His warrior instincts were fully engaged. He slept in short bursts, always alert, ready for attack. Bora also noticed the predator's signs. She studied them carefully, then did something remarkable. She left a portion of her food at the edge of her camp, away from where she slept. She created a small barrier using thorny branches between the food and her sleeping area. Then she settled down peacefully. "What is she thinking?" finally spoke, confusion evident in his voice. "She's thinking like prey that has survived for millions of years," Yang said. "Give the predator an easier option than you." The fifth and final day arrived. Both participants had survived. Now it was a matter of condition and method. Judges would evaluate everything. Something unexpected happened at midday. Eth, while checking his territory, discovered Bora's camp. He approached carefully, weapon ready. He found her sitting by her fire, the teapot heating once again. She looked up at him without fear. "Hello there, would you like some tea?" Eth stared at her. This was not part of any survival training he had ever received. "Why do you offer me anything?" "Because you look tired," Bora replied simply. "Sit down. You've been running yourself ragged for days." The warrior should have refused, should have returned to his camp. But something in her voice and her complete lack of fear made him pause. He lowered his weapon slightly. "This is a contest." "It is," Bora agreed. "And we've both survived. Sit, rest for a moment, tell me about your people." Against all logic, Eth sat. Bora poured tea into 2 cups she had fashioned from bark. She handed one to him. He took it suspiciously, sniffed it, then tasted it. His eyes widened slightly. It was good, better than good. The herbs she had used were medicinal, soothing. "Your name is Eth, yes?" Bora asked. "It is." "Tell me, Eth, why do you fight? What drives a warrior of your people?" Eth found himself answering. Perhaps it was exhaustion. Perhaps it was the strangeness of the situation. "We fight to prove worth, to establish strength, to secure resources for our pack." Bora nodded, listening. "On Earth, my world, we have a saying. The strongest tree is not the one that never bends. It's the one that bends with the wind but never breaks." "That sounds like weakness," Eth replied, but his voice lacked conviction. "Does it?" Bora sipped her tea. "I've survived 77 years. Wars, famines, loss. I raised 5 children when food was scarce. I protected my family when danger came. I adapted. I learned. I bent but never broke. Is that weakness?" Eth was silent for a long moment. He looked at this small, elderly human who had survived the same challenge he had, but with completely different methods. She hadn't fought the environment. She had worked with it. She hadn't isolated herself. She had maintained her humanity, her small comforts, her routines. "You are not what I expected," he finally said. "Neither are you," Bora replied with a smile. "You're honorable, I can see it. You fight because that's what you were taught, not because you're cruel." They sat in silence for a while, drinking tea. The viewing galleries watched in stunned silence. No one had expected this. Finally, Eth stood. "The time limit approaches. We should return to our positions for the judges." "We should," Bora agreed. She stood with some difficulty, accepting Eth's offered hand for support. "Thank you for the conversation. It made this challenge much less lonely." Eth looked at her for a long moment. Then he did something that shocked everyone watching. He performed a warrior's salute, a gesture of respect usually reserved for equals. "You are a warrior of a different kind, Elder Bora. This I now understand." The time limit ended. Both participants exited the dome. Medical teams checked them both. Eth was in excellent physical condition but showed signs of mental fatigue and stress. Bora was physically tired but mentally alert and calm. The judges convened. They reviewed footage of both participants. Eth had demonstrated superior physical skills, efficient resource management, and proper defensive strategies. Bora had demonstrated environmental adaptation, resourcefulness, stress management, and something the judges had never scored before: successful social engagement, even in isolation. When saw that Eth had shared tea with Bora, he approached his warrior. "Explain this." Eth met his leader's eyes. "She survived differently than we would, not worse, not better, different. She maintained her spirit, her culture, her humanity throughout. I could not harm her at the end. My honor would not allow it." "You refused combat." "There was no combat to refuse," Eth replied. "We both survived. She proved her point without needing to defeat me." The judges announced their decision. Both participants survived the full duration. However, the evaluation shows that the human maintained better mental health, used fewer resources, and demonstrated superior environmental adaptation. Additionally, she achieved successful social engagement, turning a potential conflict into cooperation. Victory goes to humanity. The chamber erupted in debate. The delegation was silent, processing what had happened, looked at Bora, who was accepting water from her grandson. "One contest decided," he announced. "2 remain. We proceed to the strategy challenge tomorrow." Wu helped his grandmother back to their quarters. "How are you feeling?" "Tired," Bora admitted, "but good. That young warrior has a good heart under all that armor and training." "You befriended him." "I understood him," Bora corrected. "There's a difference. Now I need rest. Tomorrow will be interesting." The strategy chamber was filled with holographic displays and control panels. It was designed to test tactical thinking under pressure. The room could simulate any combat scenario, any military situation. Commanders throughout the galaxy used similar systems to train their officers. Captain Dongjun stood in the human observation area. He had served 20 years in human special forces before becoming a military advisor. His face was grim as he watched the preparations. "I've run simulations like this. They're brutal. The computer creates impossible situations specifically designed to break commanders." "She knows this," Wu replied calmly. "Does she understand military tactics, fleet movements, combat formations?" Dongjun's concern was evident. Yang spoke up. "She understands people. That might be more important." En entered the chamber first. The tactical genius moved with cold precision. His eyes held no emotion, only calculation. He had studied warfare for 40 years. His strategies had conquered 12 systems. Entire military academies taught his methods. He was, by every measure, a master of war. He took his position at the primary control station. Screens surrounded him, showing fleet positions, resource counts, tactical options. His clawed hands moved over the controls with practiced ease. He had done this thousands of times. Grandmother Bora entered next. She walked slowly to the second control station. Wu had shown her the basic controls the night before. She had listened carefully, asked good questions, and nodded thoughtfully. Now she looked at the displays with interest. The head judge, a crystalline being named Al, explained the challenge. "Each participant will face a scenario. You command a force against overwhelming odds. Victory conditions vary by scenario. You will be judged on creativity, effectiveness, and results. As the challenged party's champion, you will go first." En nodded once. The simulation began. His scenario appeared across the screens. En commanded a fleet of 30 ships. He faced an enemy force of 100 vessels, superior in every way. His objective was to defend a colony world for 6 hours until reinforcements arrived. The tactical genius studied the situation for exactly 15 seconds. Then his hands moved. He divided his fleet into 3 groups. The largest group engaged the enemy directly, using aggressive tactics to draw attention. The second group used the planet's asteroid belt for cover, creating a defensive perimeter. The third group, his fastest ships, conducted hit-and-run attacks on enemy supply lines. The battle was beautiful to watch. En's tactics were flawless. He sacrificed ships strategically, trading losses for time. He exploited every weakness in the enemy formation. When enemy commanders adjusted, he adjusted faster. His mind worked like a computer, calculating odds and outcomes instantly. 5 hours into the simulation, En had lost 20 of his 30 ships, but the enemy had been reduced to 40 vessels. The colony remained intact. His remaining forces were positioned perfectly for the final hour. When reinforcements arrived, they found the situation stable. Victory was assured. The simulation ended. En's performance statistics appeared on the displays. Efficiency rating was exceptional. Tactical decisions were near perfect. Loss ratio was acceptable given the circumstances. He had achieved the objective with minimal resources. The viewing galleries buzzed with impressed comments. Even Dong Jun nodded reluctantly. "That was masterful. I couldn't have done better." En stepped back from the controls, his expression unchanged. He had expected nothing less than success. "Impressive," Al stated. "Now, Elder Bora, you will face your scenario." Grandmother Bora moved to the controls. The simulation loaded. Her situation appeared on the screens. Wu leaned forward. This scenario was different from En's. Bora commanded a force of only 15 ships. She faced enemy forces numbering 200 vessels. Her objective was to secure a strategic station that controlled a vital trade route. The enemy held the station with heavy fortifications. Dongjun made a sound of disbelief. "That's impossible. No amount of tactical brilliance can overcome those odds. The computer must have generated a harder scenario for her." "Or an appropriate one," Yang said quietly. Bora studied the screens for a long moment, much longer than N's 15 seconds. She examined the enemy fleet composition, their formations, their deployment patterns. She looked at the station's defenses. She read the background information provided about the conflict. Then she did something no one expected. She opened communication channels. "What is she doing?" demanded. "This is a combat simulation." Bora ignored everyone. She began broadcasting on multiple frequencies, not to her own fleet, to the enemy. Her message was simple. "This is Commander Bora of the fleet you currently face. I wish to speak with your leader before any lives are lost. I have a proposal that benefits everyone." The simulation's enemy AI responded. This was allowed within the rules, though few commanders ever tried it. The enemy commander appeared on the screen, a simulated alien with suspicious eyes. "You wish to surrender?" the enemy commander asked. "Not at all," Bora replied pleasantly. "I wish to talk about why we're fighting. You hold this station. You need the trade route it controls. We also need that trade route. But tell me, why does anyone actually need to die over this?" The enemy commander seemed confused. "This is war. Resources are at stake." "Resources," Bora repeated. "Yes, so let's talk about resources. That station processes how much trade." She pulled up economic data from the simulation background. According to these numbers, the station handles approximately 10 billion credits of trade annually. Now, you currently take a 30% tax on all trade passing through. Is that correct? It is. And before you took the station, the previous controllers took the same percentage. Yes. Bora smiled. "Here's my proposal. You lower the tax rate to 15%. We guarantee the safety of the route with our fleet. Trade volume will increase because lower taxes attract more merchants. Your actual income stays the same or increases, but you don't have to spend resources defending the station. We split the management costs. Everyone wins." Silence filled the chamber. Both the simulation and the viewing galleries were stunned. The enemy commander's eyes narrowed. "Why would we trust you?" "Because right now, you're facing my 15 ships," Bora said calmly. "But look at your intelligence reports. The simulation has provided you information about reinforcements, correct?" The enemy commander checked his data. "Yes, you have 50 more ships arriving in 12 hours. So you have two choices," Bora continued. "Fight now, take heavy losses even if you win, and then face the reinforcements. Or accept my proposal, maintain your income, reduce your expenses, and we all go home alive. Which serves your people better?" The enemy commander was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke. "You said we split management costs. Define the split." 60-40 in your favor," Bora replied immediately. "You have more ships on station, so you carry more of the burden, but we provide patrol support in the outer system. Fair." More silence. Then, "What guarantees do we have that you'll honor this agreement?" Bora began pulling up additional information. "The simulation provides historical data, yes. Look at my force's record. We've honored every treaty we've ever signed. Look at your force's record. 3 broken agreements in the past decade. Tell me which of us has more reason to doubt the other." The enemy commander actually laughed at that. "You make a fair point." "I usually do," Bora said with a warm smile. "So, do we have an agreement?" "We do." The simulation ended. The screens displayed results. 0 ships lost on either side. Objective achieved. The station was now under joint control. Trade routes were secured. Economic projections showed increased prosperity for both sides. But most importantly, the simulation calculated something else. It measured success not just by objectives met, but by resources preserved and future stability. Bora's solution created a lasting peace agreement rather than a temporary victory. The viewing galleries exploded with noise. Some species praised the creativity. Others argued it wasn't proper military strategy. The delegation was completely silent, staring at the results. N stepped forward. For the first time, his cold expression showed something else. Confusion. This is not tactics, this is not strategy, this is something else. It's called diplomacy, Bora replied gently. War is just one tool in a box full of options. Sometimes other tools work better. But the enemy was hostile and insisted. They would not negotiate. Everyone negotiates, Bora corrected him. You just have to find what they really want. That enemy didn't want war. They wanted security and resources. I offered both without fighting. Why would they refuse? Al examined the results carefully. This is unprecedented. The simulation's parameters allow for diplomatic solutions, but in 10,000 trials, only 12 commanders have ever attempted negotiation. Of those 12, only 3 succeeded. Elder Bora, your solution is statistically superior to Commander N's in every measurable way. N's scales rippled with agitation. My solution was militarily sound. It was, Al agreed. You achieved victory with acceptable losses, but Elder Bora achieved victory with 0 losses and created long-term stability. By the simulation's own evaluation criteria, her performance exceeds yours. This cannot be valid. War is war. You cannot negotiate with those who seek to destroy you. Can't you? Bora turned to face him. War Chief, tell me honestly, how many of your wars would have ended differently if someone had asked why you were fighting? We fight because we must, replied. No, Bora said softly. You fight because you believe you must. There's a difference. Every war I've ever studied started because 2 sides wanted the same thing. Territory, resources, security, pride. But most wars could have been avoided if people had talked first. She gestured to the displays. Your champion is brilliant at war. He studied tactics his entire life, but he's only learned one solution to every problem. I've lived 77 years, War Chief. I've seen wars. I've lost people I loved to violence. I learned that the best battle is the one you never fight. N approached Bora slowly. He looked at her with what might have been respect. You think differently than any commander I've encountered. I'm not a commander, Bora replied. I'm a grandmother. I've spent my life solving problems without violence. Raising children teaches you that sometimes the winning move is finding out what everyone really needs. You turned an enemy into an ally, N stated. I turned a problem into a partnership, Bora corrected. The enemy in that simulation didn't want to fight either. They just didn't see another option until I showed them one. The judges convened briefly. Al announced the decision. Based on objective completion, resource preservation, and long-term outcomes, victory in the strategy challenge goes to humanity. Ev, watching from the area, nodded slowly. He had begun to understand. This elderly human had defeated another of their champions not through superior force, but through superior understanding. His expression was difficult to read. 2 challenges decided. The final contest will be single combat. Tomorrow, no diplomacy, no negotiation, simply warrior against warrior. Bora met his gaze calmly. As you wish. As the chamber cleared, Dongjun approached Bora. Ma'am, that was extraordinary, but tomorrow is different. Combat is physical. It's violent. Are you sure you can face their duelist? Bora's expression changed. The gentle grandmother faded, replaced momentarily by something harder, something that had survived 7 decades of a harsh universe. Captain, I've been fighting my entire life. Tomorrow will be no different. She walked away slowly, leaving Dongjun staring after her. Wu found her in her quarters later. 2 victories. 2 challenges, Bora corrected. She was stretching carefully, working muscles that hadn't been tested in years. Tomorrow is the dangerous one. Can you win? Bora paused in her stretching. I can try, that's all anyone can do. The whole galaxy is watching now. Then let them watch, Bora replied. Let them see that humans don't give up just because we're old. Let them learn that experience matters more than youth. Let them understand that we respect our elders for a reason. She resumed her stretching. Tomorrow would test everything she had learned in 77 years of life. Tomorrow would show the galaxy what humanity truly valued. Tomorrow, the real challenge would begin. The arena of honor was ancient. The had built it centuries ago on this station specifically for challenges like this. The floor was smooth stone, worn by countless battles. The circular space measured exactly 50 meters across. Viewing areas surrounded it on all sides, rising up like an amphitheater. Every seat was filled. Wu stood in the human section with the rest of the delegation. His hands gripped the railing tightly. Beside him, Yang appeared calm, but his jaw was tense. One had tears in her eyes already. Dongjun watched with the expression of a soldier who had seen too many battles. "This is wrong," one whispered. "She shouldn't be doing this." "She volunteered," Wu replied quietly. "No one forced her. She's 77 years old facing a warrior in his prime. She knows that." In the section, stood with his warriors. Eth had removed his armor in respect. En watched with his calculating eyes. Both had been defeated not by strength but by different kinds of wisdom. Now they would see if wisdom could overcome pure combat skill. The rules were simple and ancient. Two beings entered the arena. Combat continued until first blood was drawn or one combatant submitted. Killing was forbidden but serious injury was possible. Weapons were allowed but must be traditional, nothing technological. The judges explained the rules again for everyone. Medical teams stood ready. Everyone understood this was dangerous. And entered the arena first. He was terrifying to behold. The duelist stood 7.5 feet tall. His scales were darker than the others, nearly black. Scars covered his body, each one a story of survival. His muscles moved like steel cables under his scaled skin. He carried 2 curved blades, each one worn from years of use. And had been fighting for 20 years. He had never been defeated, not once. He had trained since childhood in 17 different fighting styles. His reactions were faster than human sight could follow. His strength could crush bone. The crowd fell silent as he took his position in the center of the arena. He performed a ritual kata, his blades moving in patterns too fast to fully see. It was beautiful and terrifying at once. When he finished, he stood motionless, waiting. Then Grandmother Bora entered. She walked slowly, using her wooden walking stick. She wore simple clothes suitable for movement. Her gray hair was tied back tightly. She looked impossibly small compared to him. But something was different. Those who looked closely could see it. Her movements, though slow, were deliberate. Her posture, though aged, was perfectly balanced. Her eyes held no fear at all. She reached the arena center and removed her shawl. The viewing galleries gasped. Her arms bore old scars faded with time, burns, cuts, marks of violence from decades past. These were not the arms of someone who had lived an easy life. Bora set her walking stick aside carefully. She faced and bowed with respect. He returned the bow as honor demanded. "Elder," and spoke, "I do not wish to harm you, but I will not dishonor you by refusing to fight properly. I will show you the same combat I would show any warrior." "I expect nothing less," Bora replied, "and I will do the same." Al raised one crystalline appendage. "Combatants ready," both nodded. "Begin." And moved first. Not at full speed, not yet. He wanted to test her to see how she would respond. He advanced with one blade raised, the other low. It was a classic opening. Bora didn't try to match his advance. Instead, she moved sideways, circling. Her steps were small but precise. She was measuring distance, timing, watching his balance. And struck. A controlled attack, fast but not his fastest. His blade swept toward her shoulder, a strike meant to draw first blood and end this quickly and cleanly. Bora moved. not away from the strike but into it. Her body shifted at an angle, letting the blade pass by her by mere inches. Her hand touched his wrist, not grabbing, just redirecting the momentum, and stumbled slightly, his own force working against him. The duelist's eyes widened. He recovered instantly and attacked again, this time faster, a combination of strikes that had defeated countless opponents. Bora defended differently than anyone he had fought before. She didn't block directly, she redirected. She moved minimally, wasting no energy. Each of his strikes missed by the smallest margin. It was like fighting smoke. She's using Tai-Kai, Dongjun breathed, combined with something else. Aikido maybe, pure defensive martial arts. Will it be enough? Wu asked, his voice tight. Against anyone else, yes. Against him, Dongjun shook his head. I don't know. And increased his speed. Now he was fighting seriously. His blades became blurs of motion. Any single strike could have ended the combat instantly. The sound of steel cutting through air filled the arena. Bora continued her dance, because that's what it was, a dance. She moved with rhythm born from 77 years of life, every movement connected to the next. She conserved energy perfectly, never making motions larger than necessary. But she was slowing down. Age couldn't be forever. Her breathing became heavier. Sweat appeared on her forehead. And saw this. He pressed harder, driving her back. His expression showed concentration but also something else. Confusion. She should have been defeated by now. How was she still standing? Then Bora did something unexpected. She stopped retreating. As En's blade came down in what should have been a finishing strike, she stepped forward, inside his guard. Time seemed to stop, and was committed to his attack, his blade already moving. Bora's hand moved in a precise strike to his wrist. The pressure point she hit was exact. His fingers spasmed. One blade fell from his grip. But he still had one blade. He swung it desperately, trying to create distance. Bora was too close. The blade caught her shoulder, cutting through cloth and skin. First blood. The arena erupted and had won. The rules were clear. First blood meant victory. But something strange happened, and didn't celebrate. He stared at Bora with wide eyes, because in that final exchange he had realized something. When she struck his wrist, her other hand had been positioned at his neck, not touching but there. A killing strike held back at the last instant. She could have won, she chose not to. Bora pressed her hand against her bleeding shoulder and smiled. You're very skilled and truly impressive. You held back and said slowly, that strike to my neck, you could have ended this before I cut you. Could I? Bora replied. Or maybe I'm just old and slow. But her eyes told a different story and knew the truth. He had fought thousands of battles. He understood what had happened in that split second. Medical teams rushed into the arena. They treated Bora's shoulder. The cut was clean but not deep. She had turned at the last moment, minimizing the injury even as the blade struck. Al approached the center. First blood has been drawn. Victory goes to the champion N. The section erupted in celebration, but it was muted. Something felt wrong about this victory. And helped Bora to her feet. Elder, why did you pull that strike? Because first blood was the rule, Bora replied simply. You followed the rules, so did I. You won fairly. But you could have. Could have what? Bora interrupted gently. Killed you, seriously injured you. For what? To prove I can still hurt people. I spent my whole life learning to protect, not destroy. Climbed into the arena. The right of supremacy stands at 2 victories each. The final challenge ends in our favor, by ancient law. Wait and spoke. His voice carried authority. War Chief, I must speak. Turned to him, speak. This victory is not what it appears, and stated clearly. The elder human held back a killing blow to allow me to draw first blood. She chose to lose rather than cause serious harm. Silence fell over the arena. Explain, demanded. and demonstrated the final exchange in slow motion, showing the positions of Bora's hands. Here, her strike to my wrist was perfect, but see her other hand, positioned for a strike to the throat. She would have hit first if she had followed through. Instead, she pulled back and allowed my blade to reach her. Eth leaned forward. She sacrificed victory to avoid harming you. Yes, and confirmed. En's eyes widened with understanding. That is, a strategy I never considered, losing to win. Bora sat on a bench while medics finished wrapping her shoulder. I didn't lose to win. I lost because that was the right choice. Your warrior is young. He has decades of fighting ahead of him. Why would I rob him of that just to prove a point? But you have proven a point, said slowly. He approached her, his massive form towering over her seated figure. You have proven that you could have one, that you chose mercy over victory. I chose sense over pride, Bora corrected. There's a difference. The war chief was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to address the entire arena. The right of supremacy requires 3 challenges. We have completed 3, 2 victories for humanity, 1 for the, by law, humanity has proven superior. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Some agreed. Others protested that the final combat had been won by. Raised his hand for silence. But I wish to address something more important than law, something about honor and strength. He turned back to Bora. Elder human, you have defeated 3 of our finest warriors, not through superior force but through superior understanding. Eth you survived against through wisdom and compassion, and you defeated through creative thinking and peace, and you could have beaten but chose mercy. Bora said nothing, simply listening. You asked me yesterday if any of our wars would have ended differently if someone had asked why we were fighting. Continued. I have thought about this question. The answer troubles me. He looked at his 3 warriors, each one the finest of their kind. We train for battle from birth. We study tactics and combat. We make ourselves into perfect weapons. But you train for something else. You train to live, to survive, to find solutions that don't require bloodshed. That's called being old, Bora said with a slight smile. You learn that every fight avoided is a victory. Perhaps, acknowledged, or perhaps your species understands something we have forgotten, that true strength is knowing when not to use power. And knelt before Bora. It was a gesture of profound respect in culture. Elder Bora, you are the greatest warrior I have ever faced, not because you could defeat me, but because you chose not to. You showed me that there are more ways to be strong than I ever learned. Eth and En approached as well. Eth spoke first. In the survival challenge, you taught me that wisdom outlasts strength. En added, in the strategy challenge, you showed me that the best victory is one where everyone survives. All 3 warriors performed the traditional salute together. It was unprecedented. These were the 3 deadliest warriors of their species, showing submission to an elderly human woman. Address the crowd. The right of supremacy is complete. Humanity has proven their worth. The Outer Rim colonies remain under human control. This is law and honor. The judging panel confirmed this. Al announced it officially. The matter was settled. But wasn't finished. However, I wish to propose something beyond law, an alliance between our peoples, not based on fear or force but on mutual respect and learning. Yang stood in the human section. What kind of alliance? A cultural exchange, replied. Your elders teach us perspective. Our warriors teach you combat skills. We learn from each other. Perhaps both our species become stronger through understanding rather than conflict. Wu looked at his grandmother. She was tired, her shoulder bandaged, but her eyes were bright. She nodded slightly. We would welcome such an exchange, Yang announced. The arena filled with the sound of agreement from various species. The mood had shifted from competition to possibility. Bora stood slowly, accepting En's offered hand for support. She addressed the crowd in her gentle voice. I'm just one old woman. I'm not special. Every human carries the wisdom of generations. We respect our elders because they've lived through things we haven't. They've learned lessons we still need to learn. That's not unique to humans. Every species here has elders with knowledge worth preserving. She looked at, "Your warriors are magnificent, but imagine how much more magnificent they could be if they learned from your own elders. If they understood not just how to fight, but when to fight, and when not to." The war chief bowed his head. "You honor us with your wisdom, Elder Bora." "Call me grandmother," Bora replied with a warm smile. "Everyone does." The crowd laughed. Tension broke like a lifted fog. What had begun as a challenge for dominance had transformed into something else entirely. As the arena cleared, species mingled and talked. The warriors stayed close to Bora, asking her questions, wanting to understand. She answered patiently, treating them with kindness and respect. Wu finally reached her. "Grandmother, you scared me." "I scared myself," she admitted quietly, "but it worked out." "You changed everything today." "No," Bora corrected. "I just reminded people that there's more than one way to be strong." Galactic Council chamber was filled beyond capacity. Word had spread about the right of supremacy and its unexpected conclusion. Now, representatives from dozens of species crowded in to hear the formal announcement and witness what would come next. Grandmother Bora sat in the human delegation area, her shoulders still bandaged but healing well. She wore simple, comfortable clothes. Her walking stick leaned against her chair. She looked exactly like what she was, an elderly woman who wanted to go home to her garden. But every being in that chamber watched her with new eyes, some with respect, some with curiosity, some with something close to awe. She had done what seemed impossible. Stood at the center platform with his 3 warriors. Al floated nearby, ready to make the official declaration. The chamber fell silent as the crystalline judge began to speak. "The right of supremacy has been completed according to ancient law. 3 challenges were issued and met. In survival, humanity proved superior through adaptation and wisdom. In strategy, humanity proved superior through diplomacy and creative thinking. In combat, they achieved first blood, but the circumstances of that victory require acknowledgement." Al turned to display the footage of the final combat. The slow-motion replay showed clearly what it had described. Bora's hand positioned perfectly for a killing strike, then deliberately pulled back. The elder human chose to lose rather than cause serious harm to her opponent. This demonstrates a form of strength previously unrecorded in any right of supremacy. By the traditional count, humanity won 2 of 3 challenges. By any meaningful measure of wisdom, restraint, and capability, humanity has proven themselves worthy of their territorial claims and significantly more. The declaration was official. No one could dispute it now. The Outer Rim colonies would remain under human control. The challenge had failed. But the mood in the chamber wasn't one of defeat or victory. It was something else entirely: contemplation. Stepped forward, "I wish to speak." "You have the floor, War Chief," Al acknowledged. The massive looked around the chamber at all the assembled species. "For 3 days I have watched my finest warriors face one human elder. Each time I expected quick victory. Each time I was proven wrong, not because my warriors were weak. They are the strongest of our kind, but because strength alone is not enough." He turned to where Bora sat. "Elder Bora, you asked me a question. You asked if our wars would have ended differently if someone had asked why we were fighting. I have an answer now. Yes, many would have." His voice carried weight, the authority of a leader who had led his people through decades of conflict. "We pride ourselves on our warrior culture. We train from birth to be strong, to be fierce, to be undefeated. But we have forgotten something important. We have forgotten to ask why we fight." Eth stepped forward to stand beside his war chief. "In the survival challenge, I learned that staying human, staying civilized, staying connected to culture and compassion is not weakness. It is strength that outlasts physical power." N joined them. In the strategy challenge, I learned that every battle has alternatives, that the finest victory is one where all parties survive and prosper, that enemies can become allies if given the chance. And completed the line. In combat, I learned that true mastery is knowing when not to strike, that mercy and restraint require more strength than violence, that choosing not to kill is harder than killing. The three warriors bowed to, then turned and bowed to Bora. The gesture sent ripples through the entire chamber. Continued. We brought our deadliest warriors. Humanity brought one grandmother. We thought this was mockery. We were wrong. Humanity showed us what they truly value. They value experience. They value wisdom. They value the knowledge that comes from living a full life. They respect their elders not because of tradition, but because those elders have earned respect through decades of surviving, learning, and growing. He paused, letting his words sink in. How many species here have forgotten their elders? How many of us push aside those who have lived the longest because they can no longer fight or work as they once did? How many of us have lost wisdom because we stopped listening to those who have seen the most? Uncomfortable silence spread through the chamber. Many species were guilty of exactly what described. Modern society valued youth, strength, speed, innovation. The elderly were often seen as burdens rather than resources. A representative from the stood. They were in species known for their efficiency. War Chief, your words have merit, but our society moves quickly. The old ways become obsolete. What can elders teach us that our databases and educational systems cannot? Before could answer, Bora stood. She moved slowly to the platform, waving off Wu's offered assistance. When she reached the center, she looked up at the representative. You ask what elders can teach. Bora's voice was gentle but clear. We teach perspective. Your databases have information, we have experience. There's a difference. She turned to address the entire chamber. Information tells you what happened. Experience tells you why it matters. Information gives you facts. Experience gives you context. Your computers can calculate the most efficient solution to a problem, but we can tell you about the last 10 times someone tried that solution and what actually happened. Bora walked slowly around the platform as she spoke. I'm 77 years old. I've lived through 3 wars. I've seen governments rise and fall. I've watched technology change the world. I've raised 5 children, each one different, each one requiring different approaches. I've survived famine, disease, loss, and heartbreak. All of that is in here. She tapped her head. All of that shapes how I see problems and solutions. She stopped and looked directly at the. Your databases can tell you the exact chemical composition of bread. I can tell you that when food is scarce, people share differently than when it's abundant. Your computers can calculate the optimal way to end a war. I can tell you that the soldiers on both sides are usually just scared young people following orders. Another representative stood, this one from a species known for their long. But Elder Bora, wisdom comes with age regardless. Why do humans specifically value their elders? Because we're mortal, Bora replied simply. Humans live short lives compared to many of you. Maybe 80, 90, 100 years if we're lucky and healthy. Every human who reaches old age has survived everything life threw at them. Every elder human is a repository of knowledge about survival, adaptation, and perseverance. She smiled softly. We don't respect our elders because they're old. We respect them because they've proven themselves over and over again, year after year, decade after decade. They've solved problems, raised families, contributed to society, and kept going even when things were hard. That deserves respect. Yang stood in the human section. If I may add something, in human culture we have a saying, those who forget history are doomed to repeat it. Our elders are living history. They remember what worked and what failed. They remember the consequences of decisions. They can warn us away from mistakes we're about to make because they've already seen those mistakes happen. Dongjun added his voice. I'm a military officer. I've trained young soldiers for 20 years. The difference between a recruit and a veteran isn't strength or speed. It's judgment. It's knowing when to act and when to wait. That only comes with experience. Elder Bora beat our finest warriors not despite her age, but because of it. Al spoke up. This council has existed for 3,000 years, yet in all that time, we have never had a challenge resolved the way this one was. We have never seen victories achieved through the methods Elder Bora employed. Perhaps we have been overlooking something important. A murmur of agreement spread through the chamber. Species began talking among themselves. The conversation was shifting from debate to consideration. Seize the moment. I propose a formal initiative, a galactic exchange of wisdom. Each species identifies their most experienced elders, those who have lived the longest and learned the most. We create a council of elders, separate from this political body, whose purpose is to advise and guide based on their collective experience. One stood excitedly, like a council of elders for the entire galaxy, drawing on the wisdom of every species. Exactly, confirmed. We have councils for military matters, economic matters, scientific matters. Why not for wisdom, for perspective, for experience? The idea took root. Representatives began discussing it seriously. Some species had elders they had been ignoring. Others had long-lived beings whose knowledge was gathering dust. The possibility excited many of them. Bora raised her hand for attention. Before you get too carried away, I want to say something important. The chamber quieted. I'm not special, Bora stated firmly. I'm not a hero, I'm not a legend. I'm just an old woman who wanted to help her grandson and protect her people. Everything I did in these challenges I learned from living a normal life, surviving hard times, raising children, making mistakes and learning from them, growing older and hopefully wiser. She looked around at all the different species. Every single being in this chamber has elders like me, beings who have lived full lives, who have stories, who have learned lessons. The question isn't whether they have wisdom to offer. The question is whether you're willing to listen. Why wouldn't we listen? Someone called out. Because it's hard, Bora replied honestly. Listening to elders means admitting you don't know everything. It means slowing down when you want to move fast. It means respecting people who can't contribute the way they used to. It means valuing something that can't be easily measured or... She tapped her walking stick against the platform floor. Wisdom isn't efficient. It's messy and complicated and often frustrating. But it's also the difference between repeating mistakes and learning from them. It's the difference between reacting and responding. It's the difference between winning a battle and creating lasting peace. And spoke from his position with the other warriors. Elder Bora, will you stay and help establish this council of elders? Your guidance would be valuable. Bora laughed softly. Absolutely not. I have a garden back on Earth that's been neglected for a week. I have who need their grandmother. I have a life that I'd like to return to. I'm not a politician or a leader. I'm just me. But you have so much to offer, In protested. And I'll offer it, Bora replied. From my home, through video calls, by sharing stories with anyone who asks. But I'm not going to live on a space station giving speeches. That's not who I am. She looked at Wu. My grandson can represent humanity in these matters. He's young, but he listens. He respects his elders. He understands that new ideas and old wisdom work best together. That's what you need. Young people who respect their elders and old people who trust the young to build the future. Nodded slowly. You are wise to know your limits and your desires. Very well, but I hope you will accept visitors. My warriors wish to learn from you. My door is always open, Bora said warmly. Come visit. I'll make tea. We'll talk. I'll tell you about Earth and humanity and all the mistakes we've made and learned from. And you'll tell me about your people and your experiences. That's how wisdom spreads, through conversation and shared stories. The formal proceedings concluded shortly after. The council voted to support the Galactic Exchange of Wisdom initiative. A committee was formed to identify suitable elders from each species. Humanity's territorial claims were confirmed. The right of supremacy was officially closed. But the real impact was just beginning. As news spread across the galaxy, species everywhere began reconsidering how they treated their elders. Retirement homes became centers of learning. Elderly beings who had been ignored were suddenly asked for advice. Young people began recording stories and lessons from their grandparents. They underwent the most dramatic change. They established a new tradition. Before any warrior could be considered truly elite, they had to spend time learning from their oldest veterans. Not just combat techniques, but philosophy, history, and wisdom about when not to fight. 3 months later, Bora was back in her garden on Earth. She was planting tomatoes when a shuttle landed nearby. An Eth and N emerged, looking somewhat uncomfortable in the peaceful setting. Grandmother and greeted her. They had all started calling her that. "We have come to learn as you offered." Bora smiled and gestured to her garden. "Well, first lesson. If you're going to visit, you're going to help. These tomatoes won't plant themselves. Come on." The 3 deadliest warriors of the species spent the afternoon planting vegetables and listening to an elderly human woman talk about soil, weather, patience, and growth. They learned more in those few hours than they had in years of tactical training. That evening, sitting on Bora's porch drinking tea, Ev asked a question. "Grandmother, did you know you would win when you volunteered for the challenges?" Bora thought about it. "No, I knew I would try. That's different. I might have lost all 3 challenges, but I knew I had to try because no one else would. Sometimes that's all we can do, try our best and hope it's enough." "You changed our entire civilization," En said quietly. "No," Bora corrected gently. "I reminded your civilization of something it had forgotten. You changed yourselves. I just planted a seed. You made it grow." And smiled, something he rarely did. "You are teaching us even now." "That's what grandmothers do," Bora replied with a warm smile. "We teach. We guide. We share what we've learned so the next generation doesn't have to learn it the hard way. That's not special. That's just love." The story of the right of supremacy became legendary. Across the galaxy, it was told and retold. Sometimes the details changed, but the core message remained the same. The pack had brought their deadliest warriors. The humans had brought a grandmother. And in doing so, they had shown the galaxy something it desperately needed to remember. Strength comes in many forms. Power isn't always physical. The deadliest warrior isn't always the one who strikes the hardest. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is listen, learn, and respect those who have walked the path before you. And sometimes the greatest weapon is simply being kind, patient, and wise. Years later, when young beings asked Grandmother Bora about the famous challenges, she always gave the same answer. "I just did what any grandmother would do. I protected my family, shared what I knew, and tried to make things better for the young ones. That's not special. That's just what you do when you've lived long enough to know what matters." And perhaps that was the greatest wisdom of all. Understanding that true strength is often simple, quiet, and rooted in love rather than violence. That the power to destroy is nothing compared to the power to nurture, guide, and help others grow. The galaxy had learned its lesson, and it learned it from one elderly human woman who just wanted to tend her garden and love her. Sometimes that's all it takes to change everything.